I was thinking, as I was walking here, that it's so interesting that we are beginning this beautiful retreat on freedom and how to find it on a day that for many, many people in the world represents perhaps the greatest expression of the possibility of freedom that history has ever known. I mean, if you think about the things that make us stuck, and we'll talk about them over the next few days, we'll go into them in lots of detail, but if you think about the things that make us stuck, it's internal patterns, it's ways we think, it's ways we identify, it's ways we respond, it's habits, it's all of that. It's ignorance, it's illusion. But if you think about what is the thing that really makes you stuck, that's really difficult to extricate yourself from, well, being dead could be, I mean, I hadn't thought about it ever like this until I was just walking here today. It could be from a purely physical, human body with this karmic incarnation experience, not on the level of soul, but on the level of body, mind, experience. Being dead very well might be the biggest challenge to that freedom of living in expression. And yet today, so much of the world celebrates quite literally the freedom from that, from which most of us would think, like, once you're dead, you're dead. And yet, on this day, we mark, celebrate, honor, that even when you think you are dead, look what's possible. A week ago, we celebrated Hanuman Jayanti, or Hanuman Janmotsav, which in the Sanatana Dharma tradition is the celebration of Hanumanji, who is in the form of a monkey, is the divine, but in the form of a monkey, and accomplishes that which most of us would deem impossible. Surmounts challenges that most of us would deem insurmountable. Like, here I am on this side of the ocean. I have to get to that side of the ocean. I don't have an airplane. I'm not a bird, I cannot fly. But he leaps. I'm here in Sri Lanka. I need an herb that is found in the Himalayas. I have to get it back to Lanka before the sun sets. Again, no airplane, no wings. And I mention this because I realized how beautifully auspicious and interesting and serendipitous that as we're talking about freedom from that which we deem these huge, insurmountable challenges, whenever I talk about freedom, inevitably people will say, well, but wait, but what about my situation? What about this? This really is insurmountable. And yet today, from the Christian tradition, the last week from our Sanatana Dharma tradition, we are honoring and celebrating beings who showed us that even that which seems absolutely, objectively insurmountable, death, an ocean, time and space, isn't. So it's a very nice place to begin, because we at least now know what the highest possibility is. When most of us think about life goals. They center around happiness, what I want in order to become happy. As though being happy were the highest state. But actually the highest state is free. Because happiness, we have it today, we don't have it tomorrow. Until and unless that happiness is anchored in freedom, freedom from my emotional state, depending upon anything in the outside world, how it acts, how it behaves, how it chooses, how it decides, how it speaks, how it governs, how it weathers. As long as my happiness is dependent on anything, if it's not anchored in freedom, it's not going to last. Freedom is the highest state. And freedom is actually the only thing that can give us a happiness that doesn't go up and down. Otherwise, happiness is just essentially an up wave. You don't have lots of waves here. It's a calm ocean. I don't know, maybe certain times of the year you do, but now the ocean is really calm. But if you see the waves of the ocean, it's up wave, down wave. For most of us, happiness is just the up wave. Freedom is not getting out of the ocean. And this is a really important point, and we'll come back to it in more detail. It's not about getting out of the ocean. It's about diving deep. It's about diving into a place in which whatever is happening on the surface of the waves isn't impacting you. A lot of times people think, oh, spirituality is going to make me dull. And I've had so many people say to me, well, God, I know meditation sounds great. I know you say I should do it, but I actually really like the excitement of life. Nothing wrong with it. I've had a lot of people say it, I know that spiritual life, all that, celibacy stuff and all that. I know it works for you, but I really like excitement. I like beauty. I like this. I like that. And here's what's interesting. If you look at an ocean from the outside, it looks beautiful. See some waves that go up and down. It looks nice. We've all been on the beach and said, oh, what a nice ocean. Look at it from the airplane. Oh, what a pretty ocean. We take pictures out of airplane windows. But then you put on a snorkel mask and you get your face just 1 inch into the ocean. And suddenly the entire world of possibility opens up. And I've never been scuba diving, but from what I've heard from people who do scuba dive, is that it makes snorkeling look like nothing. The deeper you go, and although I've never snorkeled, I've certainly seen National Geographic and Discovery Channel documentaries on what life is like in the depth of the ocean. The colors, the glory. The deeper you go, it doesn't become boring. It actually becomes more beautiful. But it's beautiful in a way that is stable. Exciting in a way that is stable. Rather than in a way that is dependent upon high tide, low tide, the up, down of the wave. There's a beautiful story of when Alexander, the one we call Alexander the Great, the greatness is debatable, but just for the sake of recognition. When he heard about the yogis of India, the story says that he very much wanted to find one. He heard that they had all of these powers. And he wanted to find one, and he wanted to bring that yogi back with him. All the powers that the yogis have. So he went looking for a yogi. Couldn't find one, couldn't find one. Finally one day, he and his army are going through this land between cities, between villages, nothing is there. And finally one of his men says, oh, over there, look under the tree. And under the tree is a very barely clad man with long hair, long beard, and he's in meditation. And Alexander dismounts and he gets down and, are you a yogi? Are you a yogi? The yogi says yes, or acknowledges it. And Alexander says, oh, wonderful, come with me. I'm going to make you rich. I'll give you everything that you want. I'll give you all the riches, everything you want. Just come with me. And the yogi says, I don't want anything. He says, you must want something. Gorgeous castle, mansion, rubies, diamonds, the best food. Yogi I don't want anything. So Alexander says, I am the great, I am the one with everything. There must be something I can give you that you want. And the yogi says, just one thing. So Alexander gets very happy. There's going to be this one thing that I'm going to get him to come with me. And he says, yes, what is it? Tell me. And the yogi says, could you just move a little bit this way? And Alexander says, sure. And he moves a little bit that way. And he says, now will you come with me? And the yogi says, no. He says, but there's nothing I want from you except you had taken this beautiful sunshine that I was getting from the divine. You stood right in front of the sunshine. Nothing you can give me, other than just giving me back what it was I had before you came, which was the rays of the sun. Now you've stood aside. And I love the story because it's a sweet story, and it just reminds us of freedom. This is freedom. There's nothing you can seduce me with, nothing you can entice me with, nothing that I need to be happy. If you really want to give me something, okay, give me back the rays of the sun I was enjoying. That's it. And that's where freedom becomes the answer, because everything else that we are suffering from, anger, pain, grudges, false identification, ignorance, jealousy, competition, all of these things that plague us. If we go around and I say, okay, what's your greatest cause of stress, of misery? You'd all give me something slightly different, but almost inevitably, it's going to be based upon something that you have no control over. This person is behaving like that, or not behaving like this. The universe is not acting the way I think it should. The weather, the stock market, our elected officials, my family members, my boss. Freedom is the ability to experience my highest state, my truest state, my fullest state, regardless of what's going on around me, regardless of my body, regardless of what's happened to it, where it goes, who says what about it, who projects what onto it. For me, I'm not going to take up very much time sharing my story because I want to talk about you and us. But just for a moment, for me, that freedom arose the first time when I stood on the banks of Ganga at 25, having come to India with a backpack, many of you know. And I had come on a journey that I thought was just a very, very simple adventure. I was in the middle of getting my PhD in pediatric neuropsych. I was an academic. I was a scientist. I was not a spiritual person. Or we're all spiritual people. I was not someone who identified as spiritual. I would love to have said that I was searching, seeking. But I didn't even know that this world existed. I didn't know there was something to look for. So I ended up in India. I was married, my husband wanted to go, I wanted to keep him happy. And because I was a very strict vegetarian, and had been a very strict vegetarian since I was a teenager, and had discovered that Indian restaurants were the only places anywhere in the world where I didn't have to have fights, essentially, with waiters or chefs in languages that I didn't speak about broth of vegetable soup or sauces or seasoning or anything like that. So I agreed to go and stood on the banks of Ganga and was given an experience of such transformation. An experience of being in the presence of the divine. But in addition to the divine facing, eyes opening, heart opened, spiritual transformation on that level, it did something else very, very interesting and very exciting and very transformative. It gave me the awareness that that divine that I was experiencing all around me also was in me. And up until that age, I had identified very deeply, fully and completely, with my body, with my story. Here's how old I am, here's what I look like, here's what's wrong with what I look like, here's the grades I'm getting in school, here's what I'd like to be doing, here's my level of popularity, here's the history that I have, the agony of it, the ecstasy of it. Here's the relationships. Here's the way that I struggle. The emotional struggles, the psychological struggles, the relationship struggles. Here's the story. And that was who I thought I was. And suddenly in that moment, I was given the experiential awareness of knowing I'm not that. I am inseparable from this pervasiveness of the divine that began when I looked out over this sacred river that is the mother goddess, the goddess Ganga, that was gifted then, but that stayed no matter what I looked at, and that stayed when I turned the vision inward at myself. And the idea that I was not in some way damaged, that I was not in some way less than, not enough, was extraordinary. Because I think so many of us move through the world feeling like we are not something enough. Whether it's on the outer level of beautiful or rich or successful, or an internal level, good enough, pure enough, spiritual enough, worthy enough. So many of us are constantly moving through the world with that experience of lack in the very nature of who we are. And so we are looking to something in the outer world to make us feel full. A relationship, a job, a paycheck, an achievement, something I'm going to acquire, attain. And freedom is that makes us know you are already full. You are inseparable from that which is full. There's this beautiful, beautiful mantra that we chant. Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vishishyate. We are that infinity, that fullness, that wholeness, that completeness that is the same as the divine. The mantra is literally the spiritual equivalent of mathematics 101. What is infinity minus 10? Infinity. Infinity divided by 8 billion. Any math experts? Anybody past 6th grade? Right? Infinity divided by 8 billion. Infinity. That's what freedom gives us. And it's not, as I said, it's not about getting out of this world. It's in the world. In the world. But free from the stories, the narratives, the thought patterns, the habits that keep us stuck. And for me, so much of this has come. I want to, aware of the time, I want to open it up for questions before we conclude. But just lastly for now, and we have 3 days together. For me, this has come in a union of yoga, karma yoga, jnana yoga, and bhakti yoga. Because it's full. Freedom is full. It's not minus anything. And so a lot of times people ask, well, which is the best? Which is the fastest? Which path are you on? And what you realize is it's actually all of them. The fullness of yoga is all of it. And it's not something that you get out of the ocean in order to experience. It's something that you experience every minute and every moment of every day. How you act in love, in union, in surrender. Do you remember the divine? And are you aware at every minute and every moment that you are not the doer, but you are the one through which doing is happening? Do you remember that you are the one who is aware? Every minute, every moment. If we focus on allowing our action, that karma, to be infused with, saturated by, anchored in bhakti, devotion, love. And don't worry. Don't worry if you can't feel it for God. A lot of times people say, I don't feel love for God. I chant, I'm here, I listen, I pray, but it doesn't flow from within. Don't worry. Keep chanting, keep praying. But in the meantime, love anyone, love anything. Because ultimately at the core, everything is that divine. So as long as you are loving the essence, what you're loving is the divine. So we live in bhakti as we act in karma. Whatever it is, are you washing dishes? Are you cooking dinner? Are you grocery shopping? Are you sweeping the floor? If you sweep the floor like Shabari, with such love that God shows up on your doorstep. And with such an awareness, a constant awareness of who you are. Whether we say, Aham Brahmasmi, I am that supreme reality, I am that existence. Or whether it's an awareness that you are the lover of the beloved, whatever pathway you come through. Pathway of duality, of bhakti, a pathway of non-duality, of Advaita, that doesn't matter. Ultimately, at the highest truth, Even the worshippers realize we are one with the beloved. The lover, the beloved, the love, it's one. But we bring this into our lives every minute, every moment. So we'll spend the next few days diving really deeply into that which makes us stuck, we think makes us stuck in our day-to-day life. And how do we realize? It's not about get free. It's about how do we realize the freedom, anchor in the freedom, so that we move forward with that. And with the, I think, 10-ish minutes we have, is that right, till 9:25? 9:30, lovely, 15 minutes we have. I want to open it up because satsang quite literally in Sanskrit means in the presence of truth, in the association of truth. It's not a class, it's not a lecture. It's us together diving into what I call the capital T truth, which is that truth of who we are. And diving into that so that together we free ourselves of that which makes us think we are not free. So, as I always say in Rishikesh, there's no such thing as a wrong question or a silly question. Sometimes people will preface it by saying, I know this is a really silly question, but, or I know it's a stupid question, or this question. No. If it's in your mind, if it's in your heart, if having the answer to it would bring you a step closer to living in freedom, living in truth, then not only is it exactly the right question for you, but chances are it's exactly the right question for everyone else here. So with that, we open it up. We have, I believe, cordless mics. So, lovely, lovely. So just raise your hand and they will bring the microphone to you. Yes, over here. And maybe you can also share your name and where you're from.
My name is Dipti. Spiritual name here is Shibagami. And I come from India. My question to you, is it okay for you, if you are comfortable, to share the story that you started about your life once you realize that essence of you, how it went further with the struggles or the ease to move forward?
Sure. So I have to begin the story before that, because once I had that experience, yes, there absolutely have been challenges since then, of course. But they've been challenges of remembering, which is very different from a challenge that is rooted in ignorance and illusion. So the story prior to that was a story of me growing up in Los Angeles. My memoir is called, quite literally, Hollywood to the Himalayas. It's literally the story. I literally grew up in Hollywood. And if you had looked at me from the outside, you would have said, this girl has everything. I came from a family of great prosperity, great privilege, great opportunity. Lacked for nothing on that level. I had a fantastic education. I graduated from Stanford University. I mentioned I was getting my PhD in psychology. So you would have said, she's got it all. And yet I was deeply suffering. And I was suffering on what I think of as two levels. One being the general level of, guess what? Those things don't actually bring happiness. And so when we spend our time and energy thinking that, if I just had a pair of this brand of jeans, then I'd be happy, and we get them and we're still not happy, there's an additional level of frustration and sadness and angst and agony that arises with, oh my God, now what? When we think that if we just get an A on the exam, or go steady with this person, or go to this party, then we will be happy, and we're still not, then there's that pervasive sense of dis-ease that certainly everyone I knew growing up had. But I took it at that time to be really just kind of the nature of human life. I mean, there was no one I knew who didn't move through the world with that level of dis-ease. I mean, it's what God made alcohol and drugs and chocolate cake for. Now we have, social media to distract us. At that time, it was drugs and alcohol and chocolate cake and all sorts of other things that you could use to feel happy in the moment. But I also had, on another level, my personal struggles that were separate from the general dis-ease. And that came from in the midst of the prosperity and in the midst of the privilege and opportunity and all of those blessings. I actually had suffered and struggled and experienced severe trauma as well in my early childhood. And that had led me as an adolescent into depression and addiction and an eating disorder. And I was really struggling on that level personally as well. And when I came to India, by the time I got to India at 25, I was on what felt like the almost better side of all of that. I had gotten to a point where I was successfully managing my life, managing my emotions, managing my relationships, managing my pain and my schoolwork and all of that. Nobody had ever told me that you could actually be free of it. I really believed that this was who I was, and I was going to move through my world kind of vacillating between managing well and not managing well, because that was how I knew everybody else lived. And that kind of the best I could hope for was to manage things well most of the time. And when I wasn't managing well, again, that's what you've got drugs and alcohol and chocolate cake for. And it wasn't until I got to India and had this incredible experience that I realized, oh my God, I can actually be free. And then I met my guru and found myself in the lap of the Himalayas in a tradition of wisdom and teachings that was all about freedom. And so I started learning and practicing and immersing myself in practices and teaching and wisdom around holding on to that freedom. And the struggles afterwards and the challenges afterwards really, as I said, are about remembering. It's about re-remembering in every moment, oh yeah. And my favorite tool for that is questions. It's so easy for us to berate ourselves. It's so easy, especially when you're a meditator, especially when you're a spiritual person. When you find yourself angry, upset, frustrated, to then say to yourself, oh my God, look at this. Useless you are. Here you are a meditator, and now you're angry, now you're jealous, now you're greedy. You're useless at this spiritual thing too. You're a failure at spirituality also. And it's so easy to sink into that. And what I have found is if instead of letting yourself go there, you follow a path of inquiry. And I have a lot of questions, but two of them are my most favorite. And the first is there an alternative? It's just a simple question. Is there an alternative? Might there be a different way of understanding this moment? Somebody spoke to you a certain way, they acted a certain way. you're angry, you're upset, you're hurt. Is there an alternative? Might there be a different story that could be told? Because remember, we're in story mode at that time. Obviously, the highest level is break free from the story. But in that moment of telling stories, the first step is always a better story. Can you simply tell a different story in this moment? And the second question is it worth it? Is it worth it? Because once you've known freedom, even for just a moment, once you've known that experience of that union, that connection, that truth, nothing else is worth it. And saying to yourself, is it worth it? This anger I'm feeling, this resentment I'm feeling, this insatiable desire I am having for something that I don't have in this moment, that I'm holding on to, is it worth it? Is it worth the freedom that it has stolen? Sure, you may be justified. Sure, 100 out of 100 people may say, absolutely, you are right in being angry. But is it worth it? And so begin there. And we'll talk over the next few days about other challenges and tools. But for now, there's a couple. Yeah. Other questions?
Namaste. Satish from Pennsylvania. My question is, what you just said, how to wake up this within yourself, because in this material world, you have so many external factors that is controlling you almost every second or every minute, such as market, family, life, work, all those things, and it's sometimes so hard because you do something and then you go back again and you have that same factor is affecting you not to do it. So how do you change that?
So first of all, it's important to realize that freedom is not in the what, it's in the who and the how. One of my favorite stories is the man who goes off in search of the master. And he's been guided to this master who he's heard is this enlightened master who's going to give him the wisdom that he's looking for. And he comes finally to a cabin in the woods. And he knocks on the door and there's no answer. And he hears a noise from behind the cabin and he walks around and he sees a man chopping wood. And he says to the man chopping wood, I'm looking for the master. And the man chopping wood says, yes, that is what some call me. And the man realizes this is the master chopping wood. And he says, what are you doing chopping wood? You are the master. And the master says, I just returned from collecting water in the river. So now it is the time for chopping wood. And the man says, wait. This makes no sense. Like, you're the master and you're chopping wood? What did you do before you were enlightened? And the master said, I collected water from the river and I chopped wood. And the man says, and now again you're collecting water from the river and you're chopping wood? So what's the difference? And the master said, it's in the who is collecting the water and chopping the wood. It is in the how water is being collected and wood is being chopped. The problem was never the collection of water or the chopping of wood. It's in the identification. So it's not the grocery shopping or the cooking or the housework or the errands or the chores it's not the work. It's the who and the how. It's why in so many ashrams, all ashrams probably, seva or karma yoga is seen as such an important practice. Here we are, scrubbing pots and pans, sweeping floors, chopping vegetables, cleaning toilets, designing websites, whatever it may be in different places. We're doing work. We're doing menial work. But we're doing it as we chant God's name. We're doing it to purify our mind, our thoughts. We're doing it in service. We're doing it anchored in yoga. So freedom is not from the duties. It's freedom from the identification and the story and the narrative and the what I'm doing it for. The rag, the dvesh, the illusion in which we are doing it. So tomorrow in our longer session in the morning, we'll begin with a meditative practice that's one of my favorites called Neti Neti. And it's a practice that gives us that experience of what we are not, into which the experience of that which we are may emerge. But then it becomes a practice that we carry with us into our day. It's not, oh, okay, now meditation is over, I stand up from the cushion, now again I become Satish. This is your role. It's your role. It's been handed to you by the cosmic divine casting director. The costume designer. The script writer. It's been given to you. It's a role you're playing. Play it well. Play it fully. But never forget that you're not the role. And so we'll go into those practices, and this is exactly what we will spend the next few days diving more and more deeply into. And I know in India we stretch things, but I know that here we don't. So my guru Puja Swamiji always says, thought management, tongue management, and time management are three of the most important things. So I will conclude here with a prayer together of Asatoma Sadgamaya Tamsoma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya. Oh God, lead us from the darkness of ignorance and falsehood in which we identify as these physical beings that are born, that change, that die. Lead us from that into the light of truth, in which we remember that we are that which is never born, which never changes, and never dies. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.